Hello everybody, we're going to be working on CSS today. So CSS is the language which we can use to describe the style of this web page and influence the style of this web page. As it is right now, all we can do is add content and structure to the page, so we can specify, oh look, this is a title and this is a paragraph. But as to what fonts, what colors, what background images we use, that's still untouchable. So that's what we're going to learn about today. Just to let you know what we have and what you need to make as well. Here's the folder for our website right now. And you already have, from the first lesson, an index.html and probably an images folder that contain whatever images you're using or want to use in your project. We're also going to be adding a theme.css file. You can make this in Notepad++, just like you made the HTML file. And I'll switch over there right now, Notepad++, here I come. Here is some CSS already typed in to show you sort of what it looks like. It looks a lot different than HTML. But before we get into that too much, what I'd like to do is show you in the HTML file what you're going to need to link the two files together. The index.html file, let me just go back here actually. The index.html file needs a bit of HTML to tell it which style sheet to look at. And I know you only have one, but it's possible to have more than one, so there's some code to select the specific one we're going to use. And that code goes into the head section of your website. We haven't done much there yet, so that's kind of nice. In the head we have this link tag, which will link a style sheet. And here's the name of the style sheet that we're going to link to. Technically, you can link to multiple style sheets at the same time. So, there's some fun stuff that you can do with that. But the main thing is that you type in this so that you connect your file. And this does expect, if you do type this in, that the CSS file is right beside the index.html file in the folder. It doesn't have to be alphabetically right beside it, but just in the same folder as the HTML file. Okay, so if you got that set up, if you got yourself a theme.css file beside your index.html file and this line of code in the head, then you're good to go. Make some CSS. So here I got some examples of some things that are changing up. I just wanted to show you the different components of CSS, the general rules before we learn the specific things. So first of all, you give a name of a tag. Here's our H1 tag. You might recall H1 tags are the big titles of your website. And I've chosen to style specifically H1s. And then these are some braces, the curly brackets, if you will. They're right beside the letter P on your keyboard. You press Shift, and the two keys to the right of the letter P will give you the curly braces, I should say. And then you could basically type in some rules. And the format, you might kind of already see the format just by looking at it, but basically you type what's called a selector. That's what aspect you're changing. And then a colon, and then the value of that selector, and then a semicolon to end it. And you can't miss out on these colons or semicolons at all, or it won't work. And you got to type in the names of these selectors exactly as it expects them to be, including capitalization and hyphens and all that kind of stuff, or it won't work. So if something's not working, if you can't get something to change, double check you've followed all the rules. You got the right punctuation, the right spelling, and everything. Yeah, there you go. So here we got an example of some changes. Font family. Not surprisingly, I guess, it changes the font. The family is a bit surprising, maybe. Technically, you can specify a whole bunch of different fonts, and it'll just kind of go down the list, choosing whichever font the person has installed on their computer. But right now, just use one font, and you're good to go. And then I have color as well. This color is going to change the font color, and you can either type in name of a color, like blue, red, orange. But if you want to get specific, like a certain shade of blue, then you can go and find a color code. We'll get into the color codes in a second. Let's just look and see what this does. I've saved the theme, and I've saved index.html, and what I'll do is I'll split screen it, and now I'll refresh it and just see what's going on. Hey, look at that! The font changed. The color changed. So CSS this is how we get it done. I got way too many things open right now, so I'll go back here. So we're gonna just spend the rest of this lesson. I'm gonna give you some examples of CSS. You can get overwhelmed. There's tens of thousands of selectors, and for each selector, multiple values that you can choose from. Please feel free to go investigate your own. But just to give you some grounding and foundation, we'll go through them, and just a nice snippet of useful ones. So we'll stick with talking about, I guess, fonts for now. You can put in also, if you want to center the text, there's something called text align, and you can choose different values. Personally, for this case, I'd probably choose center. Again, note the American spelling. Color is spelled American, center is spelled American, because this stuff was invented in America. So if you give that a refresh, you'll see that Mr. Pesce gets centered. I was going to actually go back to talk about color. I can also give it a background color if I want to. Background color. And maybe I'll choose, maybe I want a slightly lighter shade of blue. And you can type in words like teal, and it's got a pretty good color vocabulary. Oh, but that's not teal. I mean, maybe it's teal. Maybe I don't know what teal is. But to me, that's more green. So if I'm looking for a specific color and I can't find the word to describe it, don't worry. Every color has a code. Every shade, millions and millions of shades of colors available. All are linked with a code. Here's a place I'd recommend going to. Colorhex.com is a cool website that lets you choose codes. It's got some, here's some examples of colors. These are the latest favorite colors that you could search. There's some strikingly beautiful colors here. But also, let me full screen it. You can also choose a color. You get this little thing that looks kind of like a Photoshop color selection window. So, what the color I was thinking of, I can't seem to select it. I think something is wrong with my computer, to be honest. I apologize that this video isn't really given the result, but I can't see them. If you go there, I bet you'll have no problems at colorhex.com. For some reason, I can't click on things, so I probably have to restart my computer. But anyways, you can click on this just like Photoshop, and it will give you a code that you can then copy and paste. For now, I'll just grab a color here that I was sort of what I was imagining. There's nothing quite what I was imagining, so I'll just go with this one here. And note the color code is this thing with a hashtag. 26F4A3. They're always 6, not digits, characters long. They can be letters or numbers. So I'll paste that in there, and if I was to save that, then that will stand for that exact color in my website. So if I refresh, there I go. Oof. Just a disclaimer, I'm going to be changing the style of this website. It'll be up to you to make a nice style. My style will be demonstration only and probably turn out to be pretty terrible. So there it is. So there's some things you can use to change things like fonts, background colors. We'll get into the paragraphs a little bit differently. Paragraphs are great, but they have some other properties that are useful. You can also change things like the font as well here, but chances are you'll probably be pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Conservative, I guess, with the fonts of the paragraphs, because you want them to be readable. So if I choose a font family, I'm going to choose something that's pretty readable. Verdana is also readable, so I'll stick with Verdana. But if I save that and refresh, you'll see that it's pretty dense, and it's nice sometimes to put in some spacing in there. That's the selector called line height. Check out line height. Line height can give you some spacing between lines. If I say, if I use the M unit of measurement, that refers to sort of a relative size. So 1.5 EM is sort of 1.5 spacing. It bases it on the font size. So you wouldn't use a number of pixels. You would use sort of this relative sizing. So I'm going to save that and just show you what 1.5 spacing looks like. Hey, I just kind of spaces it out. There's also things like, paragraphs tend to be text indented. So you can indent the first character. So this could be a pixel amount. Theta px is a pixel measurement. You just get sort of an indenting going on. You can change this to be whatever you want. You can have 2 times spacing. You can have all sorts of stuff going on. Just kind of space out those paragraphs to make it look a little bit nicer. So there's some things. If you want a bigger or smaller space between your paragraphs, you can also have things like margins around your paragraphs. You can notice that you can specify all different directions of margins, and I'll probably just put margin bottom for now. I'll put a margin of maybe 50 pixels, just as an example, and you can see that it kind of spaces our paragraphs out a little bit more. But it's up to you what you do with that. So there's some options for you to kind of experiment with, H1s. Eventually you have things like H3 tags. That's my H3 tag. So I might want to do something similar to H3 tags, but maybe I want them to still be smaller. So I can apply the same stuff to an H3 tag, but I can change the font size. So an H3 tag, I could say font size and give it a different point. Maybe I want them to be 16 point. And the units of measure here is called the point. It's just like in Word, the size you'd use. Maybe in H1 tags, I want the font size to be 24 point, or whatever numbers you want to play around with. So if I refresh that, you can see that there's some consistency between design, but I can also change things as well. So the subtitles can be a little bit smaller, and the main titles can be bigger. All right. So these are all useful things. Same with, I guess we can go into lists as well. You just pick the HTML tag that you want to style, and I guess I would go ahead and change these things up. I noticed that there's some similarities though. Like we're always saying font family for paragraphs and H3s and H1s. So technically you can embed that somewhere else. So instead of saying it 3 times over, what I'm going to do is just type in them all in one location, and then everything will get the font for data instead of specifying it from one tag to the next. So you might wonder, hey, what's a tag that our whole website can benefit from? That's the body tag. Our entire website is contained inside the body tag, at least the content of the website. So I can type in font family Verdana here, and save that, and then I could refresh. And then notice that my lists also benefit from getting Verdana as well. I could still change that though. So for example, in H1, if I wanted those to be different, I could still opt out of that by giving a specific font family here. So maybe font family for this wants to be Trebuchet MS, I think is the name of the font. So I can click that and refresh, and notice that that font is different, but then everything else is Verdana. So you can sort of use that aspect to specify a default font and then change them when you feel it's necessary. I don't feel it's necessary. I'm going to leave it all as Verdana for now. And speaking of body, there's pretty useful stuff here. Notice we used a background color for our different header tags, or H1 and H3 tags. If you specify a background color for the body, oh man, you can change the whole website's background color. So I don't have a particular value in mind, so I'll go steal one from colorhex.com, and sadly I can't use a color picker on this video, so I'll go with something like this. Oh man, that pink is going to be intense. I'm not sure how I feel about this. But again, although CSS is the way to change the style, there's no guarantee the style you pick will be beautiful. Woo! That's pretty nice, actually. I'm kind of down with it. I don't know about the blue anymore, but we'll stick with it and continue on. So there you go. You can affect the background color nicely that way. Let's see. What else can we talk about? I guess another thing that might be useful to deal with is, let me expand a website. Oh my gosh, it was looking so good, but now it's so wide. This whole website is giant and just kind of spreads out to maximum horizontal space. So I'm going to show you some CSS that will allow you to contain this to sort of a central column. We'll need a little bit of HTML as well, so I'm going to switch back to index.html. And I'll show you if I've added in this div tag, div. And you'll see that it surrounds our whole content. So div at the beginning, at the very end, or just before the very end, before the end of body, I have a /div here. This will allow me to specify information about a box that this website can be put into, the content of this website. So let's take a look at that. I can go to the CSS and I can specify rules for a div. And here's some of the things you can do with a div. First of all, you can give it a width. So you can specify that number in px or pixels, 500, 600, whatever numbers you want. Your screen's width can vary depending on your computer. 1440 is the school computer's screen width. So this is less than half the screen width for a school computer. So if I refresh that, you'll see that, oh, this website's now contained in like a little box now that has a width of maximum of 600. You can do some more stuff with that. You can specify the outside margins, so you can kind of push it to the left or the right. And if you want to center it, check this trick out. You can say margin left auto and margin right auto. Oops, got to spell right. If you spell something wrong or leave out semicolons or leave out colons, you're going to bust it. Unfortunately, it's very specific. And now we can get ourselves our website centered. And this is starting to look a little bit more like a traditional website. I think I'll also mention that you can change the colors of the div's background to be different than the colors of the body. So let me go and put in a background color that's for the div, and I'll choose white. And you can see that the div's background color is separate than the website's background color, so you can kind of get multiple things going on here. I don't know if I necessarily like these colors, but it's nice to know that you can affect these things differently. So that's what happens when you give a div a background color. It's a couple of annoying things about our div. The words like bleed right into the edge of the div. So that's that space there is called padding. So you can give padding of like 40 pixels or something, any amount you want really, and it'll just kind of put a border around the page, giving you some kind of white space in there. You can choose that number to be whatever you want, and you might have noticed if you type in padding, just like margin, you can specify the direction separately. 40 seems a bit excessive, but you can play with those numbers. So that's padding. There's also border, so you can give an outline. And the way I usually do that is give the width of it, so just to demonstrate, 5 pixels. There's a style type, and you can look that up in the links on my webpage. There's dash, dotted, all sorts of stuff. I'll just go with solid for now. And then you can give it a color as well. This could be a hex code, or it could be a named color, whatever you think. So I'll give it a black border around the edge, which is not necessarily good or bad, just demonstrating what you can change there. So hey, we've changed a lot of things. I know some things that people will be interested in changing are things like putting a background picture in the back. So you can do that with body. So I can put a background image, and for this it's a little bit tricky. You have to specify the name of the picture, but you got to do it in this weird format: URL parenthesis semicolon, and the name of the picture goes in here. Try not to have any spaces in the file name. Or you have to do a little bit more extra work. It's just if you just avoid spaces and file names in web design altogether, you're going to be better off. So in images, I have a StarCraft picture, starcraft.jpg. So I'm going to put in here starcraft.jpg. Oh, but actually that won't work because it's in the images folder. So I have to say images backslash. Oof, I forget now. Is it forward slash? I think it's forward slash actually. So images / by the question mark StarCraft. And if I refresh that, then you get this picture in the background. It's kind of annoying because as you scroll, it duplicates itself. It kind of copies itself, which looks a little bit unprofessional. So you can modify that a little bit. Let me get back here. So you can do a few extra properties. I like to do background attachment fixed so it doesn't scroll. I like to do background repeat none, and then background size cover. And if it didn't cover the whole background, now it will sort of resize to cover the whole thing. This picture happened to be a good size as it was. So if I refresh that, the picture stretches to the edge, and as I scroll, it stays kind of linked to the background. Unfortunately, a lot of the detail in the picture is gone. You just see the characters that are sort of on the edge of this, so that's a little bit maybe good, maybe bad. So you have to pick a picture that's going to work that way, and it's not always easy. Some people wonder, hey, could I make the color transparent? Yeah, you can make the div's background color somewhat transparent. You can go RGBA and then give some numbers. I'll have to just mention that if you go back to colorhex.com, notice how they give you some other numbers here. They give you 254, 55, 127. So these are the RGB values. This is the hex code. This is the RGB code. And sometimes you need one or the other. In this case, I'm trying to make this background color transparent, so I can use RGBA. So I'll choose the pink. And then you can put a fourth number, which is the transparency. So I can put in like 0.1 to be 10%. It's a number between 0 and 1. So you can put in 0.9 for 90%, 0.5 for 50%, and so on. So I'll just put it at 50% just to see what happens, and you'll see that, it's pretty intense. We get ourselves a transparent div background color, and unfortunately it's not very readable. So, probably cranking it up to like 80 or 90% to make sure the text is still readable is a good call. So you can play with that and see what it is you can come up with to make that work for you. So that's, I guess, one last thing is links. So if we wanted to style something like a link, you might think, oh cool, I'll use the A tag and then I can apply my different styles. Turns out you need a little bit more. For links, you need to specify the mode. So you have to say different modes. And I'll just list them right here. So you have a link is just what links will look like by default when you arrive on the page. We got a visited. You know how links change color if you've been there? Like sometimes they turn purple or something if you've already been to the page. That's where you would specify that style. Usually people use link and visited. They leave it the same. We also have hover. So if your mouse is hovering over the link, that's what it looks like. And active as well as if you're the moment you click on the link, here's a style, and you can apply things like colors, background colors, all the things we've been doing to these things, and you can apply them here as well. So that's sort of the story there. And you're going to be aiming for this project to apply CSS to all the different things, all the different HTML elements that we are adding in. I guess I didn't mention pictures, so last but not least, we'll throw the pictures in. The selectors you can use for pictures, obviously things like font is not going to be relevant, but the stuff like border is awesome. So you can apply borders to your pictures, you can apply margins to them, you can give them spacing and that kind of stuff around them. So for example, I could put in a 10 pixel solid white border around my picture and refresh it, and you can see that it's sort of got almost like a stroke around it, just to separate it from the background color. Also, I think a really cool one to use, you can use this for your div or for images, is called box shadow. So you want to look up sort of in detail exactly how box shadow works. You give 4 different things. First one is an horizontal offset. Horizontal offset, this is sort of left and right. If it's negative, it goes to the right. It's positive, it goes to the left. But this offsetting the drop shadow horizontally, this one's the vertical. Again, negative, I think, goes up, which is weird, but positive goes down. The next one is sort of a spread. You can spread it. If it was 0, there'd be no spread. It was a solid black box. You can give it like 10, we'll give it 20 pixel spread, and it just kind of creates a gradient that transitions over 20 pixels. And then a color. I'll just use black as an example. So if I refresh that, then I get a shadow that gets behind my picture, which looks pretty cool. You can apply that to your div as well, so it has a shadow. I don't think that'll show up too much in this image, but just be aware that you can do box shadow with divs as well. I mean, I could try, I guess. You can save that, and theoretically has a box shadow now, but you will never see it with that black dark background there. I guess you can kind of see it a little bit. So there's some elements of CSS. This is just the tip of the iceberg, though. There's so many things to do with CSS, and there's not really, in the right way to style things. But what I'm going to ask you to do is to pick a topic to do your first website on, and what you're going to do is make a single page website using the HTML and CSS we've learned, and any other CSS you want to add on. And we're going to try to evoke the style of that thing. So you have to choose selectors and values that will bring out that style. So for example, if you choose to do, a page about the Vancouver Canucks, they're going to have a certain color and fonts that can be attached to that, as opposed to if you did one of my children's favorite shows right now is My Little Pony. Like if you did My Little Pony page, I'm expecting like big bright colors and curvy fonts and fun stuff like that. So lots of decisions to be made around the type of style. Your mark is going to on this project be based on using all of the HTML we've talked about, including today's stuff like divs and the link tag, as well as using CSS to style all those elements, and style them in a way that brings out your topics style. So if you made a vaporwave page, you can imagine how the style of, the 1990s kind of ironic style needs to translate in there, as opposed to if you did a style about jazz music, a page about jazz music. There's very different styles that are involved in that. So that's where we're going with that project. I hope you have a good time with it, and we'll see you next time.